Hello, friends. Our 22nd story centers around a song, and it is the most I shouldn't say popular, it is the best selling Christmas song of all time. It's not one of the great hymns of the faith like Hark the Herald Angels Sing or Silent Night, and it's not one of the common ones either, like Jingle Bells or Santa Claus is Coming to Town. The best selling commercially speaking song in the English speaking world, Christmas song, is White Christmas by Irving Berlin. Berlin's story is very interesting. He was born in 1888 in Russia. He and his family fled Russia, and when he was a child, they settled in New York City in the mid 1890s. He always loved music from the very beginning, and he found work as a teenager as a singing waiter in Chinatown, believe it or not. He married in 1912, but his wife died tragically a few months later of typhoid. He became an American citizen in 1916, and he served as an American soldier in World War I. He did not like waking up early in the mornings to revelry in World War I, and he convinced his CO, or his commanding officer, to give him a special assignment to write a musical comedy to uplift the spirits of the troop. And then the officer, believe it or not, said yes, he could do it. And so he wrote this musical comedy. It was very effective. One song he ended up throwing out because he felt it was too serious for the occasion. But by and large, it was an effective tool to cheer up the troops. His career as a composer after World War I took off. He began to get all kinds of work and became well known. He was self-taught as a pianist, never learning to read music. A famous composer, never learned to read music, and he always played in piano. He was self-taught. He always played in F sharp, which is an atrocious key for the piano. In order to explore other keys, he used assistants. He used a special keyboard to be able to do that because he was limited to F sharp. In 1925, he fell in love with Ellen McKay, who would turn out to be the love of his life. Now, Ellen's father did not like the match, and he was wealthy, so he sent Ellen off to Europe to put her out of Berlin's circle. If you listen to his music at that time while she was away in Europe, it's romantic. The music, it's full of longing. Eventually, she returned, and they just eloped. They just eloped right away. They wanted to be married, and they did not necessarily listen to her father. Their marriage was lifelong. Ultimately, they had 4 children together, but their son, their one and only son, died 3 weeks after he was born. In 1928. Berlin was no stranger, of course, to tragedy. His career continued to be successful. He wrote Putting on the Ritz. He wrote 3 musical films for Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. As time went on, he became concerned about the United States entering into war in Europe. He did not like the idea, as almost no one did at the time, of course, and he was very concerned about it. But he wanted to do something that uplifted the United States. And so he thought back to that song that he rejected for the comedy back in World War I. So he dusted it off, he changed just a few lyrics, and he published it. And that very quickly became, that song, which it was entitled God Bless America, quickly became basically a second national anthem for the United States. And it was none too soon, because 3 years later, that war that everybody was trying to stay out of, everybody feared, it came. December 7th, 1941, the United States was in de facto war with Germany, with Italy, with Japan. And so days passed. Matter of fact, 18 days passed before the first Christmas in which the United States was embedded in a war that it had dreaded for about a decade. And so this song debuts, Christmas Day, 1941. It's a melancholy tone, and it really struck a chord with everybody who heard it. The words expressed a longing for home, a longing for better times, which everyone was feeling, not just the troops that had just been deployed, but all of those who were nostalgic for years when they didn't have a big war hanging over their heads. And it continued, that song continued to be popular in 1942. As a matter of fact, in 1942, it was the most requested song among armed forces radio. In addition, it topped the Billboard for 11 weeks straight. Bing Crosby, he was the one famous singer of this particular tune. And he would go out and do USO shows for the men in Europe and the Pacific. And they would always ask him to do the song. And he said this, clearly they identified the wistful lyrics about holidays at home. And it was difficult. Bing Crosby didn't really want to do it because it would inevitably make the men nostalgic and sometimes sad, but they would call for it whether it was on the docket or not. And the song, White Christmas, it's not just remarkable for its commercial success. Rather, it's remarkable for a few other reasons. Firstly, it's the first mainstream song that focused primarily on home and hearth. And it helped establish those things, believe it or not, as a value or as a recognized value in America at the time. But the second and third reasons the song is kind of remarkable have to do with Berlin himself. For the melancholy tone in the song is not accidental. It came from the heart of the composer. For Berlin's reflection on past Christmas days was also melancholy. His 3-week-old son had died on Christmas Day in 1928. Neither him nor his wife liked Christmas at all. The final reasons it's ironic that Berlin wrote this song goes back to his origins in Russia. For Irving Berlin was born Israel Balin, and his family fled Russia because of the persecution they faced as Jews. When his name was badly misspelled on the first piece of music he ever published, I, Berlin, he decided to keep the name, changing his first name slightly. And so thus, by a twist of ironies and strange circumstances, the most commercially successful Christmas song in the English-speaking world was written by a man who, for several reasons, did not celebrate Christmas. Now, as we mentioned before, White Christmas is not a song of faith, not by any stretch of the imagination. But it has, nonetheless, for a few generations now, helped countless people to reflect back on the days of their youth that often celebrated the coming of Christ, the Prince of Peace, who was so often looked to in a time of tragedy back in past wars. Grace and peace to you, my friends, and whatever you do in these next few days as we approach Christmas, don't forget about the important things. Take care.